Yo, what's good YouTube? It's boardzy, and this is finally going to be a comparison between what I believe to be the best wireless mice on the market right now that you can buy, the Razer Viper V2 Pro and the Logitech G Pro X Superlight. Ever since the drop of the Viper V2 Pro, I've been getting tons of requests to do this comparison, but I wanted to give it around a month of use so I could really judge things like battery life and just the overall quality of the Viper V2 Pro, because the Superlight has been my go-to mouse for over a year now. I've had this unit since launch. It's been blessed by God, the whole nine. So I just wanted to give the V2 Pro some proper time. But yeah, enough blabbering. Now I will get into the actual comparison. One last thing, if you find the video helpful, do be sure to like and subscribe. But first thing I'm going to talk about is the build quality between these two mice. Like I said, I've had multiple Superlights. I've used them for a long time. I can personally vouch that the build quality is incredible on the GPX Superlight. From the click quality to the sidewalls, this mouse just feels insanely well built at 60 grams. The Viper V2 Pro has a very high quality feeling as well in terms of the structure. I'm not gonna lie though, if you do squeeze very hard, I'm talking more pressure than you would put even with the most aggressive claw grip, you can feel the sides flex a bit. I still can't get the side buttons to activate, but I don't know if some units will have worse flexing than others, while I've never had a single creak or flex on the GPX. So I would say maybe the Superlight feels around 5% more premium in hand, but it's nothing that has affected my actual use. Another thing with the Viper V2 Pro is that there is a good amount of side play on the main clicks. Again, if you are just clicking it straight on, you won't have a problem. But my batch 1 Superlight also has a lot of side play as well, so it does seem like it takes these companies like 1 or 2 batches to get the tooling down. Realistically though, everything I've brought up with the Viper V2 Pro has just been a minor nitpick, considering the fact that these are $150 mice and you want the best of the best quality. But they aren't actual things that have been issues for me in game or really at all, except for when I'm looking for the problem. So at the end of the day, both of these mice are going to feel extremely good and have a good quality feeling in hand at their respective very low weights, which I guess is the next thing to talk about. On my scale, which is of course the only objective scale, the Viper V2 Pro weighs in at 57 grams while the G Pro X Superlight is 60 grams. Obviously that is a negligible difference in weight. If I did pick these mice up, I'm not sure if I would even be able to tell the Viper V2's lighter. It does just feel less bulky in hand compared to the Superlight shape. But yeah, don't go buy one mouse because it's lighter than the other, because it's really not a big difference. But I will say the Viper V2 Pro is definitely on the Superlight's level in terms of weight and balancing. This thing just feels incredible. Regardless of which mouse you go with, you're going to receive a very good feeling weight. Around 60 grams, it seems to be the sweet spot where not too many people are going to have issues with stability or the mouse feeling too light, but you get all of the advantages of a lighter weight mouse. And like I said, just both of these mice, they feel balanced to perfection. It's like it wasn't just a low effort weight reduction job done. Something that comes along with the very good weight balancing is stable and natural feeling initial motions. It's a bit hard to describe, but since the center of gravity is like centered on these mice, it's not hard to get the mouse moving and just like controlling the motions. Obviously, no matter what mouse you use, the weight, you will be able to adjust to it, but I just really only have good things to say about the weights on these mice, specifically the Superlight with the higher profile back hump. I think that this will provide enough stability for so many people that it's not really a risky weight in my opinion. With the Viper V2 Pro being a much flatter mouse in general, you don't really get that same level of back hump support. So specifically, if you are claw gripping, you're going to want to have a pretty like tight and aggressive grip on the mouse, just so you can get that stability and control. On the Superlight, I think it's a bit better for more relaxed style grips. I guess I'm talking about the shape now. And for fingertip grip, definitely go with the Viper Ultimate. There just isn't as much going on in the back of the mouse to interrupt your fingertip grip, so I feel like the range of motion is a bit better on this for like vertical movements with your fingers. At the end of the day though, both of these are extremely safe shapes. That's why the companies just keep putting out different versions of them. and they're going to be accessible to lots of hand sizes, lots of different grip styles, but I would say overall the Superlight is the safer shape, definitely excels for palm grip and more relaxed claw grips. When it comes to claw grip, it is just going to come down to personal preference, which is always the most boring yet most accurate thing you can say about a mouse shape. If you enjoy low profile shapes for claw grip, the Viper V2 Pro could be your endgame. Personally, I have been really liking the Viper V2 Pro for aggressive claw. As you can see, the grip width is relatively thin, but then the mouse gets significantly wider towards the bottom. The Superlight, it just doesn't widen towards the bottom to the same extent, so it feels much flatter on the sides. And the Viper Ultimate, when I grip it tightly, I just get a very solid locked-in feeling. There isn't much inner palm contact, but like the sides of my palm, you can't really see it, but that is where the contact is being made versus the Superlight. It's totally on the inside of my palm. Things like palm contact will obviously vary based on hand size. My hand size is 21 by 11, so I do have larger hands and can just use both mice comfortably with essentially every grip style. But I honestly don't think there is an objectively right answer for which mouse is better for performance. They're both incredible, and that's just kind of what you have to accept. But to put it simply, if you want low profile, go with the Viper Ultimate, but if you want higher profile, go with the Superlight, just for shape. There are obviously other factors that matter a lot as well for performance. Moving on from shape, now I'm going to talk about all of the buttons. So the Viper V2 Pro, the main clicks are using the Razer V3 optical switches. These are improved in terms of tactility, but they are a bit heavier than the prior V2s, which did have a mushiness issue. And the G Pro Superlight is using Omron 20Ms that are very well tuned by Logitech. Omrons get a lot of hate, but this is an incredible implementation of Omrons. Even on my unit I've had for over a year, the clicks just still feel the same as they did day one, and I've had to click these millions of times by now. The Omrons are definitely lighter than the V2 Pro switches as well. So for people who really want light clicks to spam, the Superlight will be easier to do that with, but I'd never felt while editing in Fortnite that the clicks were too heavy on the V2 Pro, or really in any situation. But without a doubt, it takes more force to activate them. I don't have any problems with pre or post travel, like in a significant way. Like I mentioned before, I do have some side play on the Viper V2 Pro, but it's nothing that affects me in-game when just clicking the click straight on. In terms of latency, I believe that the Viper V2 Pro would have lower click latency because it's using optical switches as opposed to a standard mechanical switch, but since the Superlight's click latency is already so low, I don't think these are differences that you will ever be able to notice in any scenario. By the way, the optical switches on the V2 Pro are probably the best implementation of opticals I've felt. They are definitely a loud switch, but in terms of actual like tactility and a good click feeling along with good performance, these are the best balance I've felt in an optical switch. But once again, with the Superlight, I don't have any issues with the actual quality of the clicks. And yeah, Logitech, just across all of the units, the click quality has been really good. So it's definitely something worth valuing long term, and there will be no double clicking despite the fact that these are Omron switches. So yeah, once again, I think both of these mice have really good clicks. The Viper V2 Pro does have more comfort grooves in the clicks if that is something you value, but if you just want a super light and snappy click feeling, the Superlight will offer that. But moving on to now the side buttons, this is something that Razer made a big improvement on compared to the Viper Ultimate. They had very flat side buttons, they didn't protrude at all, and they had side buttons on the right side. With the V2 Pro, they got rid of the right-hand side buttons, made them protrude more on the left side, and now just have some of the best side buttons I have ever felt on a mouse. These are extremely clicky. I don't have any issues with pre-travel or a mushy feeling, which is obviously a big problem with the G Pro Superlight. The side buttons are just incredibly mushy. I'm still able to use them perfectly fine in Fortnite, but it's just not a good click feeling. One thing you can do is you can put some like Corepad or BTL grip tape. They provide cutouts for the side buttons, and this actually does help the issue a lot, and it makes them stand out a bit more. But just out of the box, the side buttons are really good on the Viper V2 Pro. I value side buttons more than any other reviewer, and I can tell you that these are A1. Next, I'm going to talk about the scroll wheel. Really just not too much to say. Both of these feel like pretty average scroll wheels. The Superlight does have a more notchy sound to it, but in terms of like the actual tactile response, I don't think people are going to have a strong preference of one or the other. But I do have this weird issue. Occasionally when I'm scrolling up on the Viper V2 Pro, I will hear like a creak or a squeak. It's just something happening in the scroll wheel. It's not too much of a big deal, and it doesn't affect me in game. So yeah, not too much to say about the scroll wheels. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the stock coating on the mouse. The Viper V2 Pro does have a pretty standard feeling chalky coating. There's really not much to it. It performs pretty well with sweat in my testing so far, but the Superlight does have a very nice rubbery coating, and I do think that this is something that just makes the mouse feel a bit more premium and grippy in hand. Both companies actually do provide grips out of the box. I think I burned the ones Logitech provides. Those are so bad. The ones Razer provides aren't bad. They definitely have grip to them, but they are a more hard style grip, hard style based, as opposed to a softer, more rubbery style grip, which I think is better. Aftermarket grips are available for both mice if you are not satisfied with the stock coating, but I would definitely have to say that the stock coating on the Superlights is better and more premium just for getting a solid grip of the mouse. Moving past the coating, I'm going to talk about mouse skates. I think both of these companies provide solid but not exceptional stock mouse skates. I do have a theory that since these mice are light and they're being sold to such a mass demographic, that the companies put on more controlled versions of PTFE just so people don't complain that the mouse is uncontrollable. And after around a month, I really don't have any problems with the Viper V2 Pro stock skates. They definitely don't pick up a lot of the texture on more hybrid pads, so when aftermarket options do become available, I will be picking some up. On the Superlight, I don't have a unit with stock skates currently. My original ones wore out, and then ever since then, I've just been replacing them. So when it comes to stock skates, it's really just up to you. Most consumers will be fine with the stock experience, but aftermarket options are available if you desire them. I think one of the last features to talk about is the sensor and the battery life. So for battery life, the Superlight is better by a large margin. This lasts for 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how much use I give it. I see so many reviewers say oh, the 70-hour battery life. Bro, this thing lasts forever. The Viper V2 Pro, it seems to go down around 10 to 15% a day. So I would say it lasts around a week on average, on 100% charge, while the Superlight, it just lasts longer. The Superlight also uses micro USB, while the Viper V2 Pro uses USB-C. There's your answer right there. Get the Viper V2 Pro. It has USB-C, dude. That's all that matters. But all jokes aside, despite having micro USB, the Superlight still charges faster. In an hour and 30 minutes, it went from 10% to 100%, while in an hour and 15 minutes, the Viper V2 Pro went from 4% to 58%. I did the studies, I did the research. Logitech is just better when it comes to battery life, power saving settings. So yeah, another thing with the V2 Pro, whenever I turn it on, it takes 3 seconds for the cursor to register. Are other people having that problem? Is it just me? It's so weird. But yeah, now the actual sensor of the mouse. The Viper V2 Pro has the newest top-of-the-line PixArt sensor, the 3950. Specs-wise, this is better than the Logitech Hero sensor. Are you actually going to be able to notice the tracking improvements? Most likely not, but you will have a lot more freedom to actually customize the sensor. You get full control over the LOD of the 3950, while Logitech is fuck you, you get our auto LOD setting, which honestly works fine, but some people, if you want to fine-tune the LOD, that's an option. In terms of latency and sensor positioning, it's just, I can't notice a difference, man. One thing I will say though is that even when I'm using the same in-game sense, the same DPI, just testing these mice alongside each other, the Viper V2 Pro does feel faster. So it could be just a bit of DPI deviation, but I don't feel like I have less control. So it's faster inputs, but at the same amount of control, while the GPX Superlight just feels a bit slower. Maybe it's just a more true DPI, I don't know, but that's just one observation I can make. But honestly, in terms of tracking on both of these mice, it's going to feel exceptional. The polling rate's going to feel very consistent. You're going to have a smooth and clear picture while tracking, even compared to poor implementations of 3370s, 3335s. I will say that these top sensors are an upgrade. You won't have latency issues on either of these mice. Technically, Razer is ahead in the DPI count race. Who's going to get 100k DPI first? That's the real question. But yeah, exceptional sensors on these mice. And that is part of what you are paying for on a mouse with a $150 price point. MCUs and sensors are expensive as fuck. But yeah, that's really all I have to say features-wise about these mice. So now I'm going to get to the conclusion. Is there a mouse between these two that is straight up just far better than the other? No. I hope that's clear by now. I've gone through the mice feature by feature. You've seen in some cases like the side buttons, I think the Viper V2 Pro is better, but in other cases like the coating, I think the Superlight's better. So it's really going to come down to what you value in a mouse. For me personally though, I have really been enjoying the Viper V2 Pro shape. It's a lot more usable of a mouse to me than the Viper Ultimate was, and along with the new features and just every aspect of the mouse feeling good for me personally in the solid build, I'm going to keep rocking with the Razer Viper V2 Pro. I'm going to keep my Superlight on my desk. It's been the benchmark I use to test mice for so long now, and I still really enjoy the mouse, so I'm not going to stop using it, but I will consider the Viper V2 Pro my main for now on. Maybe that will change when a new mouse releases. Maybe I'll go back to the Superlight, only God knows. One last thing though in regards to pricing, I've made this video under the assumption that the mice are both available at $150 for you like they are in the United States. I've gotten some comments from people in other countries saying that the price of the Viper V2 Pro is way more than the Superlight. In that case, I don't think it's worth paying the premium unless you really want the low profile shape and the newer features compared to the Superlight, because I think if you can save like 30-40 bucks and get the Superlight, you will be absolutely fine and still be receiving a top caliber mouse and not like overpaying for no reason. And last thing, if you are in the United States, actually no, I think anywhere, you can sign up for the Razer Education Program and you will get 15% off. That's like over $20 off the Viper V2 Pro. What other reviewer is putting you onto that? That's all I'm going to say. But like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry that it went on for so long, but I don't know, there was a lot of features to cover. And yeah, just let me know what you thought. Like and subscribe. Peace.